When I was in IMG doing my J1 waiver process, I wish I listened to conversations from other physicians who are right in my shoes. I believe it would have made it so much easier to navigate the system. Most international medical graduates don't fail in the US system because they're not smart enough. They fail because no one ever explains the system clearly. And it's so hard and confusing because there's so many terms and so many steps like labor certification, I-140, I-485 and J1 versus H1B. Where do I go? Today, I'm breaking down the green card process for physicians in plain English. No legal jargon, no fear-based advice, just the roadmap you as an IMG deserve to understand. Stay tuned and let's get right into it. Hi, Dr. Tolu. Welcome to the IMG Roadmap Podcast. It's my pleasure to open up 2026 with you as one of our guests. We're pivoting this year. We're talking about other issues that really matter to IMGs. And today we'll be talking about the visa process, all the way for non-US IMGs, all the way up to citizenship. So before I even go right into the meat of what we're here to talk about, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're calling from, what specialty you're in?
Hi, Dr. Long. Thanks for inviting me to join your podcast. Yes, my name is Dr. Tolu Abikoye. I'm IMG, originally from Nigeria. Currently, I'm in Florida, Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm practicing family medicine. I got to the United States about 15 years ago to start my journey with with IMG, and did my residency in Minneapolis, Minnesota, 3 years family medicine residency before I started practicing as an attending. So it's been a journey, a quite challenging journey with a lots of lessons learned, lots of obstacles overcome to get, all the paperwork completed and get the processing from an F1 visa to currently just got my citizenship this December 2025. So it's been a long process, and I'll be glad to educate our listeners, let you know what I went through, things that I could possibly have.
Yeah, so in order for us, the listener is probably someone like you 10 years
Yeah.
ago, 5 years ago, who is either in residency and has that plan of getting an H1B, or they're a J1 who wanted to switch to an H1B, or maybe they're even a B1, B2 in rotations and they're looking at that vision of H1B or J1 for residency. And then you have people like us who both, I came in on an F1 as well, and are looking to just switch now to go into clinicals or residents. So why did you come in as an F1? Like what was the reason?
Got you. Yeah, so I came in to do a master's degree in public health. That was my initial goal after completing med school back in Nigeria, where I'm originally from. I said, okay, I wanted to do a master's in public health and just learn more about health delivery for a community, a society. So I decided to apply to the University of Minnesota as an F1 student back in 2010. So that was my initial thought process. Got to Minnesota, completed my degree in about 2 years, master's in public health. After completing this, I've been thinking about residency, and several things came to mind. Should I go into family medicine? Should I go into internal medicine, pediatrics, or other specialties? But at the end of the day, I enjoy working with people, working with clients, even all through med school. So I decided, okay, let me go into family medicine. And then I started the process of writing the USMLE, step one, step two CK, step three. I did all that while I master's, and then I applied to rest in Minneapolis. Comparing that to other people that will just come directly to do a J1, I think it depends on the interest. Interest. If the person just wants to go directly to residency, the person gets started on that J1 process versus coming as a master's.
Right. So that gives us a lot of perspective. You were enrolled in a master's program, and then while in your master's program, took the USMLEs, and then in that same time, we were applying to residency simultaneously with being in school. So that's how you were on the F. So how did you pick the type of visa for your residency application? How did you choose, and what did you end up doing?
Great question. So the visa was chosen. So we can either have some programs will sponsor an H-1B visa, but most programs will sponsor a J-1 visa for residency. So my program in Minneapolis sponsored the J-1. As you know, the J-1 is an exchange visa program where the applicant, the resident, is given that J-1 I was given the J-1 for 3 years from 2013 to 2016. So that allowed me to complete my first year residency, second and third year residency. So that yes, my program decided to do go for J1. If I remember correctly, most programs use the J1 as a residency visa versus the H1.
Yeah, I agree. A majority of programs will sponsor a J1. I should rephrase that. A majority of programs that sponsor visa applicants will sponsor a J1, and a minority will sponsor an H1B. Doesn't mean that there are not H1B sponsored programs out there, guys, if you're
Mhm.
listening, but it's probably a 2 to 1, where for every two
Mhm.
programs that's going to give you a J1, you'll probably get one. And it may even be a wider ratio, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
So I agree with you. I did the J1 for ease because there were many more options with the J1 than the H1B. And I did not complete step before my application, which was a requirement back in the day that you had to have done step 3 to qualify for an H1B
Mhm.
for training. So I didn't have that in my back pocket. I ended at CK and in that time CS.
Mhm.
So you went through residency on the J1 and
Yeah.
then walk us through how did that become citizenship?
Yeah, that was a long process. I'll say it was exactly 9 years after completing residency on the J1 before I became a citizen. So very long process. So yes, with the J1, we have the home residency requirement after you complete the J1 to move further in your immigration process. So, as after you complete the J1, you're required to return to your home country for about 2 years, or you work in an underserved area. And then once you work in an underserved area for about 2 years, you get signed paperwork to say, hey, you've completed your requirements to work in an underserved area, and then you can progress in the process to get your immigration. So the next step, so I started after residency, I did look to different clinics to work with, and obviously as I needed to complete that requirement, I had to go to a rural area. So from Minnesota, I went to a rural area in Michigan, just 100,000 people, small town. Very interesting experience in that I was one of the only Black physician in that entire small town of 100,000 people in Michigan. So the process was I wanted to get the visa and I wanted to make sure that I did all I could to get. So there were several places that offered that waiver process, and I did choose Michigan. So I stayed in Michigan for about 4 years, and during that time, I was able to get my green card. So to move from J1 to the green card, there are three big steps. One is the perm. That is PREM. That's the first step. The second step is the I-140, second step. And then the third is the I-485 to change adjustment of status. All those three steps took about 4 years. And as you can imagine, you want to ensure that you get everything done in time. I opened a USCIS account so I could track my progress. Extremely complicated process. The hospital hired an attorney to assist with my process. And there were some challenges, and I can definitely, during the course of this interview, talk about some of the challenges I experienced because it wasn't a smooth journey at all. There were some challenges experienced, and I can definitely share that as we walk along.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you made a very good point there with those 3 key steps because I think a lot of our listeners probably do have the same concern. And what they don't know is me and you both are in a WhatsApp group of physicians who are going through this perm process to citizenship, and that's where a lot of these conversations are coming out from. But there are other people who don't have that support. Like they're like right now you're speaking gibberish. They're in residency and it's like it's overwhelmed. So maybe we can break it down one step at a time from what you remember. What was that process like for you in residency? Like when did you start looking for jobs that would give you the opportunity for a green card, and how did that? Let's go into each step of the way.
Absolutely. So I started early in residency, knowing that there are limited spots available for to go through this process. So in residency, second year of residency, I started looking and talking with the hospital attorney. And I'll say, I think that's very important. If you're a person that doesn't have a lot of experience, like I did back then, I'll definitely say, can reach out to your residency hospital's attorney and just tell them, hey, I'm on a J1 visa. I'm not really sure about how to go about the process. Can you assist me and help me? And I'll say also, if you have other people that have done this in the past, like Nina mentioned, we have a WhatsApp group of the past, always communicate and just have that information. So yes, the first step, that is the perm process. One is to, after you have that conversation with the attorney, when you do your search for places that you can go to after residency, I'll say start early, start in your second year, look for, H1B jobs and then look for places that will do what we call the J1 waiver process. So essentially those places will be able to, hire you and then work on your paperwork. When you're doing the interview, definitely talk with those clinics and those hospitals that do you assist people to move from J1 to H1B? Do you have experienced immigration attorney that can guide you through the steps to ensure you get there? So yes, that first step, perm, when you're going for your interviews with the companies, ask them, hey, will you do my perm for me? And if they say they have experience doing it, then go forward. And then now once you get most likely they'll start the process after you start working with them for a few months. For the perm was started about 6 months after I started working as an attending. There's paperwork to document that they are unable to find another American physician in that city that can do your job. So they essentially have to put an advert in the newspaper saying you are the only person in that city that can do your job. And if you think about a small town, it will make sense when you just have a little small town and there are not too many physicians that are available. So they put an advert in the paper and then they now submit that to USCIS that, okay, this candidate is eligible for the perm. Then USCIS will take some months, probably about 9 months. So now we're going into about 1.5 years into my journey as an attending. I got the perm approval that, okay, you are approved to continue this perm process. So the next step will be the I-140. And that's the next step along the process. It's another type of paperwork to document that, okay, you are still in the process of getting this green card. You're in process of getting this green card and you have all it to get it. Now, there was a little bit of paradigm shift at when I got to the I-140 stage. At that time, I put all my trust in the hospital's attorney and I said, okay, the hospital attorney, they're going to, they will got my back and they're going to help me walk through the process. But I think, that paradigm shift was they made a mistake with my paperwork and they filed a wrong category for me, slowed me down about 10 months. It's a very stressful situation. So I say this to say for each applicant out there that are going through this perm I-140 process, you can always consult with an attorney on the side. Even though the hospital has an attorney that they are working with your paperwork, you can always hire an attorney. Some of them might charge $300 an hour, $150 an hour. It's worth it in the long run so they can, just overlook your paperwork. The most stakeholder is you and green cards, you and your family. The hospital just wants to make sure that you can work or to get your green card and your citizenship is the stakeholder individual. So I recommend always, having a consultant lawyer on the side, or even just join a WhatsApp group, talk to other people that have completed the process and don't be in isolation essentially. Don't go at it alone. So that I-140 at that point really, opened my mind. Then after that 9 month delay, I was about 3 years into my journey as an attending. Then I was finally able to submit the final paperwork. That was the I-485. The I-485, that is the adjustment of status that allowed me to finally get the card.
Yeah, wow. That I wouldn't be unforgiving for such a mistake personally. Just like you, I used the attorney that was provided to us by my employer at the time. And I remember having to be very proactive. Like if you are going to do that, take matters into your own hands and be proactive. Call your lawyer. Ask to speak to them. And one thing too that I think made a difference for me was I negotiated upfront how much they were going to pay my attorney. for this process. And I think it capped out at $10,000 or $15,000, just so that when it got to the point where my money was done and the hospital wasn't paying anymore, I stepped in and started paying those bills. But I
Mm.
think that happened for me at the green card stage, at the 480, the I-485, the
Right. Yeah.
adjustment stage. That's when I started paying for my own fees. But
Mm.
before that, she was able to build the hospital. So that's something that any listener should be aware of, is like, yeah, they may provide you with an attorney. One, do ask them if they've done this for anybody else before you even take the job. Because if you don't ask that question, you may go into a job where they've never done a J1 and they're learning with you, and you don't want to be the guinea pig, right? We all know how it feels to be a guinea pig. You don't want to be the guinea. Two, if they've done it for somebody before, find out if that person has gotten their green card yet, because that would be a true measure of if you would get a similar result. And then three, when all those things are said and done, now ask how much are you going to assist me with? And that should be written out of my. So for
Right.
me, I went for hospital medicine position after family medicine training, and that was written in my contract. So I knew, okay, at some point I'm going to run out of money and I have to take care of things. I never thought of the idea of booking a second opinion on my own. I could have, because obviously you're getting paid as an attending, but it just never crossed my mind. In part because maybe I was just on top of my attorney. I mean, we became like, I think, friends. I never met her before, but only calls and online. But I really like that you gave us that overview. And for anyone who is not paying attention, the long of the short is this: most IMG positions in the United States will offer you a J1 exchange visitor visa sponsored by the ECFM. You can train with an H1B. However, there are fewer programs that do offer that. Now, the key restriction with the J1 is that 2-year home requirement, which is where you're required to go home for 2 years or obtain a waiver. Dr. Tolu here obtained a waiver. So most of us, like him, also pursue that waiver. Waivers are the gateway to staying in the US. If you're going to stay in the US, you'll have to obtain a waiver. There's several different waivers. The most common waiver is a Conrad 30 waiver. That's the waiver I did, but there's several other waiver options, like with the VA, with the HHS, or federal agencies, DOD, hardship or persecution waivers. There's several of them. But Conrad 30 is the most, I would say, streamlined program that exists. It is sponsored by each United States state. Okay. So the state of Maryland has its own waiver program. The state of Michigan has its own waiver program. The state of Minnesota has its own waiver program. And so depending on where you go, they have 30 slots for physicians for that year for primary care specialties and some specialists, depending on the job must offer a minimum 3-year service commitment, and it must be in a health professional shortage. You can Google health professional shortage areas in all states. Just put it in Google. What's the health professional shortage area in the state that you live in right now, in Florida, and you'll get that information. Now, when you obtain that position with the J1, the waiver process is quite complex in itself, and we'll do a whole separate episode on that. But when you do get your J1, then in order to get your green card, you would have to convert to an H1B at the end of your residency training in order to work as an attending physician in the United States. Hope you're tracking with me, guys. So after the waiver, then H1B. Now, H1B position, H1B is the visa status that allows you to work as an attending while in the States. With the H1B status, you will become eligible to apply for green card, which is the permanent residence status on an employment-based category. There are two pathways now from that H1B to green cards that are employment based. The main pathway, which is what Dr. Tolu is explaining to us that he did, is the employer sponsored green card. And then and that's the same pathway I did, I should say. There are other pathways that physicians pursue, such as the national interest waiver. And I have another episode with the physician who did the natural interest waiver. We'll make sure we link it in the show notes. You can self-petition as a physician. It's harder, but you can. And because you still require service in underserved area, you still need to go through the process, all the legal stuff. So you're best just going with the structured program. Okay. And now for the employment-based green cards, what we're saying is there are 3 steps now in that process. The first is the PERM, which is also known as obtaining a labor certificate. A labor certificate basically says that this hospital has been seeking to employ someone to work in this position. They've not found a US citizen, and this is a certificate for this non-US citizen to perform labor in that area. That's kind of like a layman way of thinking about the labor certificate, but I'm sure there's a more complex way But that's the way to think about it. So that's what the perm is. The perm is your labor certification process. When you get your certificate to labor in the US, that sounds like slavery. But when you get your certification to labor in the US, then your employer files the I-140, and then that allows you to continue to work in the US. And when you have reached your maturation of your green card, of your H-1B, which is about that 3-year time frame, 2 years for some people, then you would file to become a permanent resident. And that is when your priority date is current. So when you go through the employer I-140, you'll get what they call a priority date, which is what allows you to know when you are eligible to begin the process of applying to become a permanent resident of the United States. And when that date becomes current, which is what your attorney is going to help you determine what that date is for you, then you can put in your application. So I remember my date became current on June 28th of 2015. I remember it because every day was a countdown, Dr. Tolu. I don't know if you had the same process where every day was a countdown. And I remember preparing my application with my attorney behind the scenes before that date, so that once it became current, we were ready to submit that green card application. So that's where we're at now with Dr. Tolu's story. Can you walk us through how that morphed into now having the blue passport and being able to have access to half the world without a
Yeah, it's an amazing experience to have that blue passport and just, be able to travel. Like Dr. Lum said, yeah, it's and I'm glad she broke it down. The current 30, every state has that, 30 spots available for the J1. So yes, right now we're at the, I-485 stage. Like she said, your priority date becomes current. You're prepared with the attorney behind the scenes, and you get your paperwork just ready for submission. So yes, we went ahead to submit mine. Mine was in 2020. I've, finally got that documentation submitted. Now, after you submit the paperwork for the I-485, it's essentially saying, I want to adjust my status. I was on an H-1B visa. I want to move to a green card. And like she said, there are several ways to do that, either employment-based or national interest waiver. So I was employment-based. So we went ahead, submitted the paperwork, and then we kept tracking. So I would recommend everyone has a USCIS account. Once you start this process, have your account progress of everything the attorney is doing. You can review, read through, see when your documentation was submitted, and if possible, discuss with friends. I'll say discuss with people that have gone ahead of you. Don't go this alone. I'll say that again. Please don't go this alone. There's a lot of nuances. There's a lot of things that we don't know as we are new to this. We're very new to this. So going ahead, talking with people that have gone ahead is very important. So yes, I did finally get that green card. It took about 9 months between when I submitted, when it came in. For USCIS, there's a lot of time delay. There's a delay. So in between when you submit your paperwork and when you get the results, it takes several months. So just, plan ahead of that as you prepare if you're going to move from your city to a new city. Whenever you're going to, get a new employment on the green card, like just plan ahead for that. So yeah, the green card was obtained in 2020. Now, between green card and the citizenship, there are several pathways, but the most common pathways are green card through as a general provision. So general provision determined by a 5-year rule. So when you have your green card, you have to wait for 5 years to submit your application N-400 for a citizen. Now, for marriage based, it's 3 years. So between your green card, if you get married, you have to wait for 3 years. If you want to go the marriage based route. So people that have a spouse, they're a US citizen, you can absolutely go through the marriage based route. It's faster. It's just 3 years versus 5 years, the traditional route. So the form is called the N-400. Now, the N-400 is a form that can be submitted by you personally. It's one of the forms that you actually don't need an attorney to fill because it's pretty straightforward, self-explanatory. All the other forms that I mentioned in the past, the PERM, the I-140, and the I-485, they are extremely complex forms, and I wouldn't recommend anybody try to submit any of those applications. However, the N-400 is an online form. Right now, it's about $765. You go online once you've reached that either 5 years for general provision or 3 years for marriage. You go online, you fill out your form, and then they'll accept your application, and they'll let you know when you're ready for an interview. So the next step after submitting N400 is an interview. So with an interview, you go in with your documents. There are several documents they recommend. You have to, take your green card. Some will recommend you take your birth certificate, you take your tax transcript. If it's marriage based, you take your marriage certificate. If you have children, you take your children's birth certificate, and then you present yourself to the interview. So I went in for the interview. Mine was obviously the general provision 5 years. I went in for the interview. So, and there's a history and a civics portion where you prepare for the interview. So 100 questions you have to pass 6 out of 10 questions. But however, there's been a slight change, not mean to confuse you, but there's been a slight change. Now you have to answer 12 out of 20 questions on the 2025 format. But however, you go in for the interview, they ask you these questions, and then they go through your application, and then they let you know, hey, you passed the interview or not. So thankfully for me, just this December, I was told, hey, you passed the interview and you're going to be scheduled for an oath ceremony soon. So the oath ceremony is when you are sworn in to become a US citizen. Actually, mine was at an NFL game just 3 weeks ago. The Jaguars played the New York Jets, and they said, hey, 100 of you come into the stadium during the halftime. We're going to swear you in as US citizens. I was like, wow, I really halftime show. So I was there with my wife and son, and I got sworn in as a US citizen.
Yeah, that is amazing. That's amazing, amazing. Congrats to you. It's
Thank you.
definitely, I remember the day I went in for mine, I posted it all over social media because I was so excited. It almost feels like, in addition to your medical career, that's like the second best thing that happens when you
Yes.
migrate to the United States. And we're very appreciative. And for anyone who's listening to this thinking, why don't you just stay in your home country and be happy with that? And why are you acting like this is the best place since sliced bread? Well, because it is. And if you have a problem with that, you can go back home. I'm not. So, people always want to be in their feelings about this stuff. We're excited about becoming US citizens, but I know for a fact it's something that has afforded us, me and my family, the luxury of having better healthcare, the luxury of being able to enjoy life a little bit more. And why not? Why not take the opportunity? We work really hard through residency, through fellowships, through medical school, and it's just a small way that we're getting rewarded on Earth side. It's worth celebrating. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So some people are going to ask, like, you guys have mentioned this WhatsApp group. How can I join? What do we tell them? Because I don't know. You're the boss of the group.
Oh, yeah, it's now, yeah, it's open, so it's a closed group. We have the person has to be invited to join the group. But Nina, I'm gonna make you an admin of the group. So if that's okay. And I
Yeah,
know
I
you
think
get
what they can do
requests.
is they can email me, guys. Just email
Okay.
me, admin@imgroadmap.com. That's
Okay.
ADMIN@imgroadmap.com. If you're listening and you say, hey, I'm in this process. But if you email me, here's what I need from you. I need to know your name, and I need to know where you're at in this journey. We don't want spammers. We don't want people coming in to lurk. We don't want people from the current administration coming in to know what is going on there either. So do make sure you represent yourself. And I have no problem with commissioner, like for anyone who's thinking, like, we're not doing anything bad. We just want it to be focused and meet real people. No trolls, no spam, none of that. So I need to know you're a real person if you're going to reach out, admin at IMG Roadmap, and then I will decide if I'm going to.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And like Nina mentioned, yeah, the group is only for physicians that are going through this process. And like she mentioned, we want people's comment to be private, and we don't want people from the outside getting into the group, because we get really down into details. We're about helping other physicians. We don't want like a hospital systems getting access to our group, because we talk about people's visas. We talk about very
Employers.
private things,
Yeah.
employers. We don't want, so the group is only for doctors. So yeah, send as much information as to prove that you're a physician. If you want to like put your MPI number in, just put, when you send the request, please just communicate to us that you are indeed a physician, so that we are more comfortable to accept you in the group, because it's a closed group. But we want to help doctors. We want to help doctors.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for spending your lunch break with us. And I'm going to be mindful of your time and release you. But do you have any final words of advice, encouragement for that person who is like, wow, this guy did it in 9 years, and I'm still on year one? Like, where is the hope in that?
Yeah, it's a long process. it's challenging and difficult when you're trying to plan and you're thinking, okay, when will things, come through? But I'll say keep your mind strong that okay, I'm gonna be persistent, I'm gonna be diligent, I'm gonna submit my paperwork on time. I tell people don't wait, don't let USCIS wait for you. Some people they have the priority date open, they haven't submitted the application. I tell people all the time, have everything ready, be very proactive, have all your documents scanned ready for the attorney, talk with others, join this WhatsApp group, talk with other people that have gone through the process, have a USCIS online account, always check where you are, and just be optimistic that it's a process. And if you continue with the process, you'll get to that finish line. It's a long process. Breathe and relax and work, but do your own part. And then we'll just wait for the other aspects and USCIS to do their own portion. But yeah, it's a long process, but try to relax.
Yeah, try to enjoy yourself if you
Yeah.
can through the process. I remember going through that, and while I was waiting, I was one of those people who was like, why do I want to become a citizen? The main reason for me, to be honest, was because I wanted access. Like I wanted
Yeah.
access to travel and access to give my mother the opportunity to get healthcare here in her later years, because becoming a citizen, then I can file for her and things like that. And at one point, I became so crippled by waiting for access that I thought, I'm just going to start applying for as many visas as I can get to go visit other countries
Mm.
while I'm in this waiting period. And I remember doing my H-1B conversion in the US. So I converted from a J-1 to H-1B here. I didn't leave the US. But when I got that form approval for the H-1B, then I went to Canada, the US Embassy, to get a stamp in my passport so that if I left the US, I could come back in easily for one. But two, when I was going to apply for like a Schengen visa or a visa to another country, they could see that I had a valid US visa for my employment and
Mm.
easily grant me access to visit Europe and other places. And during that time, I traveled. I went out of the country a couple of times, and I know now there's so much fear around if you go out, you're going to be let back in, and so on and so forth. But I honestly believe that if you are doing the right thing, you will encounter hardship and roadblocks, but it doesn't deter you from your ultimate purpose. So if you're on the right path and you're doing the job, you're doing the work for the American people, and you've done everything correctly, yeah, believe that favor is on your side and God's going to help you out and still live. Like, don't wait to live after you become a resident or after you become a citizen. Try to live now because we really don't know what tomorrow holds.
Exactly. Enjoy yourself, travel if you can, and live in the moment and enjoy
Yes,
the
yeah.
process. We all of us physicians, we work so hard to be here. So continue to enjoy the process. And that passport and the process, it gives you access, like Nina said, stability for your family. There are so many benefits of doing that. So but enjoy the process, go through.
Yeah. And some people may be listening to Dr. Tolu and they're like, I could relate more with him than with Dr. Loom, and I want to reach out to him. So how can they maybe connect with you? Do you use social media or have any open forums or email addresses that you like to share with the internet? Because, once you give it out, it's out there.
Yes, I have an email that I can send. Email is very good to reach me. And Nina, I can send you this. I can send you the email the after the conversation.
Okay, very well. That sounds great. We will put your email in the show notes once we receive it so that everybody else can also reach out if you want to talk with him and pick his brain more. We obviously only had 30 minutes for this conversation, but it's a very long one, right? So you guys, the conversation continues. You can reach out to me via DMs on Instagram or by email admin@imgroadmap.com. And even right here on the podcast, leave us a rating. Tell me how you feel about this episode and what you want to hear more of. I'm all here. I'm here on all ears. So thank you so much, Dr. Tolu, for being on, and we hope you have a great rest of your clinic day.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Long, for hosting me and enjoy the rest of your day.